Howdy folks, welcome to module 21 of the CompTIA A+ course. Today's module is all about using data security, and today's module consists of only 3 sections. The 3 sections we'll be covering in the second last module today, guys, is data backup and recovery, followed by data handling best practices, and then lastly, artificial intelligence, which you guys more commonly will probably know as AI. Alright folks, before the big stuff starts, help a brother out, help the channel out, help the video out, and give this video a like. It really does go a long way and it does help me a lot. If you'd like to know when the last module comes out for this course, maybe consider subscribing. And then folks, in case you don't know, at the end of this playlist behind the last video, there you will find 3 practice questions for both Core 1 and Core 2. Those are theory based. Now, they're not the official questions from the exam, but they do cover the same objectives. And then, if you want more practical-based questions, that you will find on my Patreon. Link in the video description down below. Alright, let's get to the serious stuff. Data backup and recovery. The first thing I'm going to start you guys with in this section is backup operations. So what does it actually entail? So let's talk about purpose. The purpose of a backup, guys, is to prevent data loss. I think that's probably one of the most obvious things about a backup is the fact that it's going to prevent data loss. In the event of something happening, something bad, whether something gets corrupt, whether you lose something, whether it's theft, whatever. In the event of something bad happening, an incident of sorts, it's going to prevent data loss. What it also does is it prevents corruption. So in the event of something getting corrupt on your machine, your server, or anywhere, it's going to prevent that because you will be able to recover the original non-corrupted version from the backup. You can of course just go and delete the corrupted version, and you just simply go and replace it with the non-corrupted version. It also prevents failure. In the event of something failing, this could be hardware, it could be software, it's probably going to be hardware though, but in the event of something failing, potentially a hard drive or something, you're not going to lose any data because you've got a backup clone copy elsewhere. So all in all, guys, it's going to enable you to do restoration. Now, a couple of best practices, folks, when it comes to backup operations is use structured backups. Now, me just saying that on its own probably sounds somewhat confusing. So this means you need to go and use some sort of structure like doing daily backups, doing weekly backups, and doing monthly backups. That will be an example of doing a structured backup. So if the boo-boo happened in the last day or so, you can just go and resort to using your daily backups to recover. If the boo-boo happened more than a week ago, then you might need to use 1 weekly backup and potentially 1 or 2 daily backups. If it happened more than a month ago, you'll have to use 1 monthly backup combined with a couple of weekly backups and a couple of daily backups to get as precise as possible. And then, folks, let's not forget about doing off-site backups. At the end of the day, you can have the best backups known to man, but if something like ransomware happens and that gets into your backups, then you can kiss your backups goodbye. So it's always a good idea to have some off-site backups as well. Some sort of backup that was not plugged in the event of something bad happening, like a ransomware attack. Now, speaking of something bad happening, guys, let's avoid local storage. The last thing you want is to go and make the backup on the very same device that you are backing up. So if I'm backing up my computer, I should ideally not back it up to the same computer onto a different drive perhaps. That's a bad idea. Imagine for a moment now, I am backing up my computer, but I'm backing it up to a different hard drive, and now I get myself infected with ransomware. What do you guys think is going to happen here? It's going to infect all my drives, including my backup. It's a classic case of putting all your eggs in one basket. So you want to put your backup in a different location. If I'm backing up my computer, I should back it up to another computer, or an external drive, or a cloud drive. The point is, as long as it's not the same device or the same location. If I'm backing up a server, it's the same can of worms. You back it up somewhere else. Now folks, from an organization perspective, where one would normally go and do backups, this would normally be your file service. You probably want to go and back up your file service, and sometimes you'll find people will go and back up to the file service. So I've seen many companies, maybe not all of them, but there's many companies out there, when people go and do backups, these backups for the user's individual machines, that will often get backed up to the file service. And then, of course, the file service will get backed up, and that backup will get stored somewhere else. So that is something I've seen quite commonly in company environments. It's not a rule, but I have seen it quite commonly in company environments. Something that companies also do, pretty much all companies do this, any company worth its salt, is they will go and schedule backups. Yes, you can go and do it probably yourself manually, but let's not forget, that is the human element. Us as human beings, we are going to make mistakes. We're going to forget. You're going to go and maybe miss something. You're going to make a boo-boo. So schedule backups. Do not forget, it is scheduled. It's going to happen whether you're there or not. It's going to happen whether you're asleep or not. It's going to happen. So at least that way, you've got peace of mind. Now coming at this, guys, from a personal perspective, you'll normally find people will go and back up to something like an external drive, or they'll go and back up to a cloud storage location of some kind. This could possibly be something like a Google Drive, a OneDrive, Dropbox. I'm just naming a couple random ones here, guys, but obviously it can extend much further than that. Now, as for the Windows tools you can go and use to go and do this thing called backing up, keeping in mind you're not limited to Windows tools. You can go and use third-party tools. But the only tools that's covered in this course is the Windows tools. But in real life, guys, you get many third-party tools out there. And let me tell you, that's most of the time what you're going to end up using. But coming at it from a CompTIA perspective, or should I say an A+ perspective, one of the Windows tools you can go and make use of is the file history feature. It is something that's built into Windows. You or the user or the technician just needs to go and turn it on. So if you go into your computer, let's say it's Windows 11, and you go run a search for file history, you'll notice you just need to go and turn it on. Now, in case you guys are wondering what that looks like, let me show you guys on my own computer here. So here's a bit of a glance. You can see I've got a bit of a black theme going on my computer today. But ignoring that, you can see my file history is currently off because I'm just using this machine to do recording and things like that. But it needs to be turned on. So if it's not turned on, you're not going to be able to make use of this benefit. File history is a sort of backup, guys. Now, one of the reasons why mine is not working at the moment is because you need to specify a location where this is going to be backing up to. So I need to go and specify perhaps an external drive. If I specify an external drive, then it'll work and it's going to go and back up to that. And once you've got file history going for you and once it's up and running, then you'll be able to make use of other benefits like the previous versions tab on certain files and documents. Anyway, let's go back to that presentation. Right, and then something else we can go make use of, if we're talking about Windows tools here, guys, is something called the Backup and Restore Center. Now, it's actually got multiple names. It's been around for a very long time. It's actually been around since Windows 7, to be more precise. Now, the funny thing about that is, it came out on Windows 7, so they actually called this the Backup and Restore tool, and then in brackets, they put Windows 7. This has often confused people in the exam because this is sometimes listed as an answer in the exam. They'll ask you, which of the following can be used to go and do backups? And the answer will sometimes be Backup and Restore, and then in brackets, Windows 7. Now, people will normally not go and choose that if they're writing a Windows 10 exam or a Windows 11 exam or something along those lines, because it says Windows 7 in there, and I mean, who's still using Windows 7? Not that it's a bad operating system, but it's legacy. So it seems like it's an incorrect answer, but not knowing it's actually a correct answer, guys. Its name is actually Backup and Restore with Windows 7 in brackets. That's actually the name. Why, you ask? Because that's very confusing. It's because it came out on Windows 7. Now, why it's so confusing is because there's a lot of things that came out on various operating systems, including Windows 7, but you don't see Microsoft putting in brackets behind those tools the name of the operating system on which it came out on. They don't do that. They only seem to be doing this on Backup and Restore. So it's a little weird. So on Windows 8 you'll find this tool, on Windows 10 and on Windows 11 you'll find this tool, but it's called the Backup and Restore tool, and then in brackets it says Windows 7. Now, if you folks don't believe me that it's not called Backup and Restore Center, but it's actually called something else, let me show you. So I'm going to show you guys this on Windows 11. I'm going to go into my control panel on this Windows 11 machine. So just one moment. Here we go.
A few moments later.
There we are. So on Windows 11, I'm going to go to System and Security because backups has obviously got to do with System. So I'm going to go click on that. And notice there it says Backup and Restore. And in brackets it says Windows 7. Yet I'm doing this on a Windows 11 operating system. Pretty funky, right? So if I go in there, I will be able to go and set up a backup and all of that. So it is a backup tool that comes with Windows. Anyway, so let's go back to the presentation. Alright guys, let's talk about restore options. Now when it comes to actually restoring these various documents or what it might be, one of the things you can go make use of is something called the Previous Versions tab. This is something I did briefly mention earlier. So for you to be able to use this benefit, you need to have the File History feature turned on, which we spoke about earlier. If you do not have the file history turned on, or if you don't have a normal backup that was made via that backup restore, then the previous version tab will not work. So what it does, let me show you guys what this looks like. So switching over.
A few moments later.
Alright, so here we are in a random folder on my computer, guys. And in this random folder, I've got a random file or a random document. I literally went and called it random document just for the purposes of this demo. Now, if I went and changed this document, let's say it's an existing document, and let's imagine for a moment, I went and changed this document in some sort of way. And now after I've changed it, I might have saved once or twice, and then after about a day or two, I realized that, oh, oopsie daisy, I need one of the original versions, one of the previous versions of this document. Now, you probably won't have that anymore since you already changed it and since you already saved over it. Now, sometimes you might get lucky. You might be able to restore that specific document to a previous point in time. It's kind of like sending it back in time via time machine, but it's going to be specifically for that file or that document. Once again, to be able to do this, you need to have the file history function turned on, or you need to have some sort of backup. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So what you do is you right click on this file or document, you go here to show more options, you go to properties. Once you go in there, you'll see there's a tab here. It says previous versions. Now, the moment mine is blank. Why? Because number one, I've just made that file. So there's not going to be a previous version since, well, I literally just made that file. But also because I don't have previous versions turned on. And secondly or thirdly, because I don't have backup or restore in use at the moment, so I've not made any backups. So if this file has existed for quite some time, that does not necessarily mean you will have previous versions to go and choose from here. So it needs to be a certain age, and if it is a certain age, and if you're lucky enough to have turned on the file history function or to have made some sort of backup, then and only then will you actually see previous versions here. So you'll be able to see a whole bunch of previous versions here, maybe just one or two, or maybe up to 20 or even 30. So you can go back in time, you can click on a version that you think might be the correct version. Now, before you go and click on restore here at the bottom, guys, I encourage you to go and open it first. View and verify that that's the correct version. If you're happy that it's the correct version, you click on restore. If you're not happy, you close it and you keep looking until you find one that you're happy with, and when you go click on restore, it's going to go and replace that version of the file. Pretty cool, right? And then, guys, under restore options, you can of course go and make use of good old-fashioned file history applet. That's literally where you just go and turn on the file history feature. So you just go in there and you can go and restore from there as well, as if it's a normal backup. Alright, let's talk about backup methods, folks. A couple of key factors to keep in mind when it comes to your backup methods is the frequency and the retention. So how often do you do backups? In other words, daily, weekly, monthly, that kind of thing. And then also, how long do you actually keep these backups? It doesn't help you go and make daily and weekly and monthly backups, but you only keep them for a very short period of time. That doesn't exactly help you. So normally daily backups get kept at least 1 week. After a 1 week period, then you'll start seeing them override the first daily backup. So you'll have about 7 days worth of daily backups on average in a company. Because if it goes beyond that, then you can just go and make use of your weekly backups. In terms of weekly backups, we normally have about 4 to 5 weeks worth of weekly backups. That's approximately 1 month. Because if it extends beyond 1 month, then you'll just go and make use of the monthly backup. And in terms of your monthly backup, we normally have about approximately 12 months worth of monthly backups. Because if that doesn't work, then you'll just go make use of your yearly backup, should you have a yearly backup. but normally the average company will have approximately a 12-month period or retention when it comes to their monthly backups. Now, as for the different kinds or different types of backups you get, guys, first of all, you get a full backup. I don't think I really need to explain to you guys what a full backup is. I think the name kind of explains itself. But if you don't know what that means it backs up all your data. Very easy recovery because it's literally just one backup and it backed up everything. Now, a lot of companies will just go and make one of these, and that's probably going to be your very first backup. So the very first backup you do of something is probably going to be a full backup. Why? Because you don't have any backups in place yet. Nothing. Nada. So you're going to have to go and do one big full backup. So the downside, unfortunately, about this, guys, is it's going to take flipping forever to get done because you are effectively backing up everything. So depending on what exactly you're backing up and how much data this is, it could very well end up taking a whole day, if not longer. So if it's a server or multiple servers, yeah, guys, I've had servers where it took like days to back up everything. The good news here is once you've got that one big full backup, from there you normally don't need to go and do a full backup again. From there, we'll go and do incremental or differential backups. Incremental and differential backups, guys, is just going to go and check what has changed since the last backup in a nutshell. So starting off incremental, this will be the changes that has taken place since the last backup in general. Doesn't matter whether it's a full backup or whatever backup. It's any changes that has taken place since the last backup. So if your last backup was a full backup, any change that has taken place since then, so if you've got new files that's been added, it's going to back that up. If you've deleted files, it's going to back up that change. If you've changed any files, it's going to back up that change. So any changes since any backup, any last backup. If you look at differential, very, very close to incremental, this is any change that has taken place since the last full backup. So it's going to ignore your last backup. So if your last backup was an incremental backup, it's going to ignore that. If your last backup was a differential backup, it's going to ignore that. It's going to specifically check for any changes that has taken place since the last full backup. So most companies you'll find will do a full backup, and then from there they'll just, do an incremental backup. So very rarely will you see them do another full backup or another differential backup. We do that, but it's very rare. And then, folks, before I move you along to the next topic, synthetic full. What is that? Believe it or not, it is actually a kind of backup. Feel free to go and Google this if you guys want to. So it basically goes and combines your last full backup and it adds data from an incremental backup. So any change that has taken place basically since your last full backup, so this is kind of close to a differential backup if you think about it, it's going to go and take your last full backup, it's going to combine it with an incremental backup, and then you've got yourself what we call a synthetic full backup. Pretty funky, right? Anyway, moving you guys along, backup media requirements. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to mention here, guys, which actually very much confused me the first time I heard this, is the GFS scheme. Now, the first time I heard that, I was like, what the heck is that? Now, this, folks, refers to the son, father, and grandfather scheme. So the G in the GFS stands for grandfather. The F in the GFS stands for father, and the S stands for son. It's the kind of backups we get. Now, in reality, we don't actually call it the GFS scheme. Nobody in real life calls it the GFS backups or the GFS scheme. I've never heard anybody say this besides in the CompTIA A+ course. Other than that, I've never heard anybody say this, and I've been in IT for more than 20 years. So I assume there is probably companies out there that will probably go and use this terminology, but I've never heard people say this besides on the course. So unfortunately, I still need to explain it to you guys, since it is something they'll ask you about in the exam. But once you write this exam, and once you pass this exam, and you get your qualification, then you can probably go and forget about this specific scheme name, because like I said, it's not really a terminology what we use in real life. Instead, in real life, we call this daily backups, weekly backups, monthly backups, and offsite backups. That's the terminology we use in real life. Nobody says son backup, father backup, grandfather backup. That just sounds silly. So son, if you guys don't know, is a daily backup. It's reused weekly, something I have explained to you guys before. So in terms of retention, it's normally retained for approximately 7 days, and after 7 days, the backups will start overwriting themselves. So backup number 8 will start overwriting backup number 1, and backup number 9 of day 9 will go and overwrite the backup from day number 2, and so on and so forth. So you'll have daily backups for the last 7 days in terms of daily backups, or should I say your son backups. In terms of fodder, you can probably guess what this is going to be. That, guys, is your weekly backups. And this is reused monthly. So that's your retention. Weekly backups are normally kept for approximately 4 to 5 weeks, depending on that month. And after you get to week 5 or week 6, it's going to start overwriting the backup from week 1 again, and so on and so forth. Then, lastly, and you probably know the answer to this one now, since you've kind of seen the concept, grandfather. That will be a monthly backup. And it's reused yearly. So your retention is going to be a year. So it's going to keep 12 months worth of monthly backups. And when you get to month 13, that backup from month 13 is going to override the backup from month 1. And the backup from month 14 is going to override the backup from month number 2. And you get the idea. And then, folks, we get something called on-site versus off-site. Most backups will probably be on-site. So it's a backup that's plugged in most cases. This will probably be your daily, your weekly, and your monthly backups also in most cases. Generally, in most environments, these are plugged in. They're connected somewhere. Not necessarily on the same device or the same location, since we did mention earlier that's a bad idea. But it doesn't mean they're not plugged in. They're probably plugged in somewhere. So should you get something like a ransomware attack, that's not going to end well. Yes, it might be on a different device, but generally things like ransomware tends to spread across your whole environment. So it's not a good idea. You're putting your eggs all in one basket. So usually we recommend you also do an off-site backup. It's a backup that's not plugged in. Now generally the proper way, the best way to do this would be to go and make a backup and legitimately send it off-site to an undisclosed location. A lot of companies actually do that. But some companies will do an off-site backup, but it's actually still on-site. It's just not plugged in. The best way to do this will probably be to go and make 2 off-site backups. 2 identical ones. One you really do send off-site to an undisclosed location. And then you make another identical one, which actually gets stored on-site. It's an off-site backup. It's just not plugged in. But it gets stored in a physical safe or a cabinet somewhere and it gets locked. It's not plugged in though. So depending on the disaster here, if it's a digital disaster, we obviously want to recover as quickly as possible of any kind of disaster. So if it's a digital disaster, you can just resort to using the off-site backup, which is actually still on-site in that safe or that cabinet. And that's going to allow you to restore this whole environment a lot quicker. But in the event of a physical disaster, let's say the building burned down, there was a riot, or there was a huge theft that took place, then you might resort to using the actual off-site backup. Yes, unfortunately, it's going to take a lot longer because now you're going to have to go and retrieve that backup. This could potentially take days, weeks, even months to get that backup. So that's generally why we resort to using the on-site one. But, I mean, if the whole building burned down, I mean, what must you do now? Anyway, guys, so in terms of off-site reduces disaster risk. So in the event of the building burning down or some sort of other natural disaster or whatever it might be, it reduces that risk. You can just go and get your backup from some other location. It also combines local and cloud backups. Not always, but it can be done. And then before we move on to the next topic, folks, the 3-2-1 backup rule. Probably sounds confusing, doesn't it? That means 3 copies, 2 medias, and 1 offsite. Pretty cool, right? Anyway, let's move you guys on to the next one. Backup testing and recovery best practices. So the first thing I'm going to start you guys with here is the testing side of things. It doesn't help you've got all these wonderful backups, but you never actually go and test them. So now one day when D-Day comes, when something eventually bad does happen, it doesn't help you go and try and use your backups then, and then you realize, oh, oops, it doesn't actually work. So when you've got backups, it's a good idea to actually go and test them. And this same concept, guys, applies to a lot of things in life. That's why you'll find a lot of big buildings, a lot of staff working there. They'll do emergency evacuation drills. They'll test the emergency equipment. They'll test the fire extinguishers. They'll test the fire hoses. Anything like that is supposed to be tested. It doesn't help you've got measures in place and things in place and objects in place, but nobody actually ever tests them. And then when D-Day comes and you want to go and use whatever this is, and then you realize, oh, oops, nobody actually ever tested it, it doesn't actually work. So when it comes to backups, this is no different. Yes, you should have backups, but you need to test these backups to see if they actually work. That's one reason. But also to see how long it actually takes you to restore these backups. That way, you'll have a very, very good idea as to how long it will take. And then when it really does happen one day, you can give your customers, your clients, your bosses, your superiors, or any stakeholders a very accurate time frame as to how long this is going to take. Because they're going to keep harassing you at that point in time. They're going to ask you, how long, what's the ETA? And at least then you can tell them, ETA is 2.5 hours. So if your test took, let's say, 2 hours, you tell them it's going to be 2.5 hours. You always tell them it's going to take longer than what you think it's going to take. You give yourself a bit of a buffer. So if it does ever so slightly take longer, then you're at least still in the green. But if you end up recovering it quicker, then you come out looking like a rose. I mean, imagine this. You said it's going to take 3 hours to restore, and now you're going to restore it in 2 hours. They're going to think, wow, this guy is the champ. He said 3 hours, and he managed to do it in only 2 hours. Man, this guy deserves a raise. Meanwhile, you knew it was going to take 2 hours. You just gave yourself a bit of a buffer. So when we say testing, guys, restore to a test directory or restore to a virtual machine or something along those lines just to see if it's actually working. And in the testing phase, guys, also verify that the data is actually intact. Verify that no files are missing. So check your data integrity and check your file inclusion. Make sure nothing has gone missing. Make sure nothing has gotten corrupt. It's one thing to say, hey, look at me, the backup has now been restored. Meanwhile, you don't realize that the backup is not successful. It's corrupt or things are actually missing. So after you've restored, verify that it's actually working the way it's supposed to be working, guys. Now, in terms of how often you should be doing this, that's probably up to you, but the more often you do this, the better. So test regularly, at least once a week or at least once a month. I would say at least once a week, but at the end of the day, that's up to you. I suppose it depends on the kind of business you are in and the kind of industry you're in and that kind of stuff. Now, in terms of recovery, guys, you need to go and do multiple kinds of recovery. So it's not a matter of, hey, let's just go and restore the backup. Okay, great. It seems like everything is working. No. There's different kinds of recoveries you need to go and look at. Sometimes you will need to recover to the exact same location. So if this is a server, you might need to recover the backup back to that same server. Maybe there's nothing wrong with the server. Maybe it's a digital corruption or something along those lines. So in the event of you needing to recover back to the same server, that's going to be different versus recovering to a different new location or to a different new form of hardware. So try and restore your backup to the original location. That is something you will need to test. Unfortunately, guys, since you are restoring to the original location, there is a possibility that this may cause some downtime. You'll find that most companies will go and do this test after hours, preferably on a Friday after work. You know, even more so on a long weekend. That's probably going to work even better. So if something goes wrong, then you've got the whole weekend or the whole long weekend to go and sort it out. Another recovery you need to go and test, luckily this one does not normally cause downtime, is to restore to a different new alternative location. So that's when you go and restore this to new hardware or new location because of some sort of massive failure. Now that does not cause downtime because your users or your staff, your clients can still pull the information or whatever this is from the original location. You are simply restoring to a different location. So it does not generally cause downtime. But when you need to go and restore to the original location to go and do a test like that, yeah, unfortunately you are going to have some downtime. So you probably want to do that on a Friday after work, folks. Anyway, so that is the end of the first main section of this module, guys. Moving along to the second main section, which is data handling and best practices. Alright, folks, the first topic we're going to be talking about in the second section is regulated data classification. And under this umbrella, I want to mention sensitive data types. Now, when it comes to sensitive data types, guys, there's many kinds. One of the most obvious ones that stands out is PII. Personally identifiable information is what that is. It allows us to identify individuals. So it'll be the person's name and last name, their social security number or ID number in some countries, passport numbers, that kinds of stuff. That kind of information is very sensitive, and you'll find that most countries have got some sort of laws and regulations and stuff in place, which basically governs how we handle this type of information. So it's rules in place. Anyway, other kinds of sensitive data types you get is healthcare. Now, a lot of people, actually most people, probably don't want their medical records being, published somewhere or being publicly accessible. I mean, whenever you go to the doctor, that's private between you and your doctor. You don't want other people knowing about your business. So medical records, guys, and anonymized or de-identified information, things like that. Then we've got credit card information. Good old-fashioned credit card information. I mean, do you want your credit card number published online, especially of the stuff in the back that they need to go and do purchases? Definitely not. This kind of stuff, guys, is normally governed by the PCI DSS. And a couple of examples of this would be, well, your card numbers, your CV2, that kinds of stuff. Now, in terms of best practices that you guys can go and execute here, guys, is train employees on secure data handling. Tell them what to do, what not to do, when to do it, and when not to go and do it. It's absolutely crucial that you go and train your employees. At the end of the day, you can go and enforce a lot of security at your company, have the best security known to man, but if your people are not trained on how to go and use that security and what to go and do and what not to go and do, it's not really going to help you. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and the weakest link is normally, unfortunately, the employee. Another best practice, folks, would be to avoid unauthorized access or exposure. So if you don't need to go and expose something, don't. And if somebody does not need to go and access something, or if they should not access something, they should not. Then you should go and block them. Also, prevent careless actions, guys. This would be, for example, maybe unencrypted data. So if something should preferably be encrypted, don't go and unencrypt it. Or if you need to go and encrypt it, make sure you do that. Don't forget to go and do that. Very important. Anyway, folks, let's move you guys along to prohibited content and licensing issues. So when it comes to prohibited content, this is not always going to be the same in all companies, but there tends to be a couple of things they've got in common. So normally you'll find companies don't allow people to have personal things on their work computers. These computers generally belong to the company, and obviously they've got rules in place in terms of what's allowed to be on there and in terms of what these machines are actually allowed to be used for. So that'll be your acceptable usage policy, your AUP policies that'll normally dictate what these machines can actually be used for. So your AUP policy will specify that you can only use this PC for the purpose of work. You can only have work-related documents and files on there. Usually they'll specify that you are not allowed to have music on there, not allowed to have movies on there, not allowed to have games on there, or your personal documents and stuff like that. But when we talk about specifically prohibited content, it might not just be those. It can also be inappropriate stuff, like illegal content that might not be licensed, or just in general inappropriate content which I cannot even mention in this course. So that falls under this umbrella of prohibited content. Most companies have got policies in place that will dictate what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, and what happens if you've got something on your machine that does not belong. And then, folks, let's talk about license compliance. Now, if you've got a company, it's absolutely crucial that your company adheres to license compliance. Your company, your client's company, as an individual user, you might be able to get away with not complying, although you should not, but you might be able to get away with it. Generally, if you're a company, though, you are in the spotlight. You're drawing a lot of attention to yourself as a company entity. So it's really, really not a good idea to go and have unlicensed software, unlicensed operating systems, or unlicensed anything in your company environment. You should always do your best to try and license everything if you are aware of something that's not licensed. So as soon as you become aware of something that's not licensed, you should go and license it. Should this be at one of your customers, one of your clients, politely and professionally inform the customer or the client, "Sir, ma'am, please note the following software or the following hardware or the following operating system is not licensed." Remember, they're innocent until proven guilty, so don't go and act like they're guilty, even though you might know deep in your heart they are guilty. Politely tell them, as if they're innocent, "Ma'am, sir, you might not be aware, but please note your software has not been licensed. Can I assist you with acquiring a legal license for the following software or the following whatever?" That'll be the correct and the professional way to go and do it. And then, folks, open source software. Some companies are not particularly keen on open source software because that means you can go and change it in any way you want. And that's sometimes seen as a vulnerability in some companies. Other companies don't mind it. They actually encourage it because it means the company is saving money. So make sure you read up on the rules in your specific company or that of your client's company. The same applies to open source licenses. Make sure you know the rules and the terms of the company that you're working with. Then, folks, digital rights management. You'll find almost everything these days have got some sort of rights or licensing associated with them. So if you are using, let's say, images or videos, anything like that that belongs to somebody else, make sure you hold the rights to use that. If you don't, make sure you get yourself a license to go and use that. And if you don't, then, well, just don't use it. So you'll find there's a lot of places these days you can actually land yourself into hot water, when you go and use this, you use that inappropriately, because there's just so many laws to keep track of. And then the last one I'm going to mention under this whole umbrella, guys, is non-disclosure agreements. I think most people know what that is. It's not something explicitly just in IT. This is something we find everywhere in everyday workplaces. So you might find it when you go to a certain client, due to the nature of their business or due to how they do things, they may or may not make you sign a non-disclosure agreement, which basically comes down to you're not allowed to talk about what you saw there. I often had this at some of my clients. So I would not be working for a specific company. I would be working for a company that services many, many other companies. I would be an engineer, and as an engineer, I get outsourced to many other companies that don't have an engineer or that don't have sufficient IT support or anything like that. And when I go to some of these customers or clients, they often have environments or things that the general public is not allowed to see or not allowed to know about. And when I go in there, I might hear some stuff and I might see some stuff or get exposed to some stuff that the average Joe is not supposed to know. So you'll find that normally before you come in, they'll make you sign a non-disclosure agreement, which means I'm not allowed to talk about what I saw in there, what it looks like, what they have, or how they do things. And this is also the case often when you work for a company. So when you work at a company, depending on the nature of this company's business, you might have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And if you ever leave that company, maybe let's say you go work for a competitor, you're not allowed to go and tell the competitor what you saw and how you did things at the previous company. It's not something you're allowed to go and do. And this was often the case of me, even of training. So I've been in training for a very long while, guys. I've worked for many colleges and universities and stuff where I've given training. And when I work for one college or university or something, and I develop content, I'm not allowed to talk about that content at my next employer, because the previous employer made me sign a non-disclosure agreement. So however they do things and whatever was developed and all of that, not allowed to tell my new employer about that. And normally I would not, because I signed that non-disclosure agreement. And also, I think it's just part of my ethics. I'm not the kind of guy that'll go and do that. So they can ask me, but I'm not going to disclose it. Anyway, guys, I'm going to move you guys along to another topic here. Incident responses. Now, what is an incident? That is normally something bad that happened. It can be something physical bad that happened. It can be something digital bad that happened. But this is A+, so we can assume that this incident is something to do in IT. Some sort of IT-related bad event that happened. Now, when it comes to incidents, you get something like malware, which is for the most part going to be a digital bad thing that's going to happen. Malware, guys, is an umbrella term we use, and this includes, but is not limited to, things like viruses, worms, Trojan horses, spyware, adware, ransomware, and the list goes on. So when your company, or your client's company, gets some sort of malware, that could be considered an incident. When you have a data breach, that is an incident. So maybe some threat actor out there, he or she or they gain access to your environment or that environment of your client. That is a data breach, and that could be classified as an incident. What is your response to that incident? And then we've got phishing. We're not talking about phishing for actual fish here, guys. You're spelling it with a P, which means we're phishing for sensitive information. Now, if it's spelled with a P, it's normally done via an email. It's not limited to email. You do get subcategories. So you get the kind that you spell with a V, vishing, which is normally done via a voice phone call. You get the kind which is called smishing with an S, which is normally done via text message, SMSs, things like that. You get quishing with a Q, which is normally done via QR codes these days. Yeah, that's a new one. How about that? So phishing in a nutshell is when if I am the threat actor here, when I'm trying to get sensitive information out of you or the user. And this can be done via many ways. But I can be sending you an email and I can be pretending to be your bank. Now, normally you'll find phishing is combined with other kinds of attacks like spoofing. Spoofing would be to forge something. So I'm going to forge my email address. In other words, spoof the email address, pretending to be from some well-known entity or person you know. And I'm going to go and ask you for sensitive information like your username, your password, things like that. Other kinds of incidents we get, folks, is DOS, denial of service. This is a kind of attack where they deny an actual service. This could be something as simple as your normal print spooler, guys. So if we deny that service, you simply just won't be able to print. It could be way more serious. It could be an actual website or an actual server that's being denied, in which case this might be a distributed denial of service attack. We call that a DDoS attack. Other incidents we get, folks, is unlicensed software. Believe it or not, that classifies as an incident. So what are you or your team going to do about it when you encounter unlicensed software in your environment or the environment of your client? And then the last one, prohibited content. Now, unlicensed software could probably be seen as prohibited content, but maybe it is software that this company is supposed to have, or that your company is supposed to have. It's just not licensed. So I wouldn't say it's prohibited per se, but unlicensed software is possibly prohibited content. Maybe it's some random software the company doesn't even know about and happens to be on your environment or your client's environment, and that's now prohibited content. Prohibited content extends much further than that, though. I mean, obviously this could be just naughty stuff that's not supposed to be there. It can be music, games, and just in general illegal stuff. That all classifies as prohibited content. So now we've got a list of about 6 random things there, guys, which could be incidents. Obviously it can be a lot more than that. What is your response to these, or the client's response to these? So should they have malware? What is their plan of action? So let's imagine for a brief moment, oh, hey guys, we just discovered malware. Now what? What is your plan of action? So your plan of action should be to go and immediately turn off backups, to go and immediately quarantine these devices that have been compromised, and to carry on with the rest of the steps. So that's your response plan. If there's a data breach, what is your plan of action when you or your team or the IT team of this company realizes there's a data breach? What steps are you going to be taking? It's the same with a phishing attack and a denial of service attack, unlicensed software and prohibited content. What is your response plan here? So if you look at the unlicensed software, I mean, maybe this person is innocent. Maybe they honestly did not know about it. So your response would be to maybe first contact this client and say, dear sir or madam, I've noticed you've got some software here which is not licensed. This is the software that I've detected that's not licensed. Would you like me to help you acquire a license for this software perhaps? So that is the response plan here, guys. So when we say response plan, follow procedures. And that's unfortunately not going to be the same for all companies. One company will do things completely different than the next company for each and every one of these incidents. Also, guys, part of your response plan is to notify the CIRT or law enforcement where applicable. It might be applicable, it might not be applicable. Now, if you don't know what the CIRT is, guys, that is Cyber Incident Response Team. It includes a whole bunch of people that needs to know about this. All the stakeholders, the IT team members, the managers, law enforcement, anybody and everybody that needs to know about this. So it's part of the Cyber Incident Response Team. Alright, moving on to data destruction methods. Wow, that topic sounds brutal, but it's actually pretty cool. So when it comes to data destruction methods, guys, there's certain types of data that companies will be working with that just should not be visible to the public. Maybe it's how they do things. It could be trade secrets. And data destruction also refers to, just in general, how does a company get rid of pieces of paper? You would normally go use shredding machines. How do they get rid of old hard drives that are now considered broken? So if you go and remove a hard drive out of a server, which is now considered a failed hard drive, it's not as simple as just throwing that failed hard drive into a bin. No. Because your opposition, your competition, your enemy might be willing to go through the efforts to go and get that hard drive fixed or repaired. Because the information on that hard drive might be worth millions for all we know. So instead of just throwing a hard drive in a bin once it's failed or considered failed, we destroy that hard drive. Like physically destroy it beyond the point where it can be recovered. So, in a nutshell, when we say data destruction methods, guys, let's talk about the overview. It's to sanitize media before reuse or recycling. So maybe this is an old computer that you want to go and give to a new employee. Now that old computer happens to have an old hard drive in it, which used to have very sensitive information on it. So before you can just go ahead and give this old computer to that new user, you will have to go and clean that hard drive. It's not as simple as just formatting the hard drive because the data can be recovered. You need to sanitize that hard drive to a point where the data cannot be recovered. Not destroy it, just sanitize it in such a way or such a manner so that the new owner will not be able to recover any sensitive information from that drive. It's probably going to be quicker and easier just to give them a new hard drive, if I'm being perfectly honest, but sometimes that costs a lot of money. And then of course recycling. So if you are going to go and get rid of this hard drive because it's beyond the point of recovering it, then you might want to go and destroy it. There's various ways we go about destroying things like hard drives and like pieces of documents and stuff. We'll talk about that shortly under some of the new topics that's going to be coming up. Now in terms of methods, guys, when it comes to sanitizing things like drives, you could go and do something called erasing or wiping. That would be to go and do something like overwriting the data. So instead of just formatting the hard drive, we do something called overwriting. You get these actual special overwriting programs, and that makes it nearly impossible to go and recover the data that was on that hard drive. The hard drive will still work. You can still put new data on it, but when it comes to recovering old past data on it, no, not really. So it's a special kind of program that you're going to have to go and use. It's going to do a special kind of feature on this hard drive, which is going to make it nearly impossible to recover any past data on it. It's not very reliable, though, for SSDs. So that's something you guys should note. Not very reliable for solid-state drives. So best practice, folks, is to sanitize all media to prevent data recovery. It doesn't matter if you're giving this hard drive to your own internal employees. You still sanitize it. So maybe it's an old computer or an old hard drive that you're selling second-hand. You sanitize it. Maybe it's an old hard drive or computer you're giving to a new employee that's going to be using it for the purpose of work. You still sanitize it. The last thing we want is for somebody to see something they're not supposed to, even though that somebody might be working for me. You never know, that person might turn rogue. So when it comes to the actual disposal and recycling, outsourcing methods, guys, how we dispose of things like hard drives. Well, let me show you guys the methods. And these methods, guys, is going to be asked about in the exam. I guarantee you this is a question in the exam. I just don't know if you guys are going to get it in the exam, but it's absolutely in the pool of questions. Now, considering how many questions they've got about this in the pool, the chances are very, very good that at least 1 out of 2 of you guys are going to get questions about the methods that can be used to dispose of hard drives. There's about 4 methods. It used to always just be 3 up until about 2 versions of A+ ago. So you guys are currently probably doing the 1200 series of A+. And I think from or up to the 1000 series of A+, there was only about 3 methods, official methods in the A+ course and in the A+ exam. And then from around the 1100 series, which is basically the previous version, they started adding a 4th one, or the 4th one got considered as an official method. So the first method, guys, would be to drill a hole through the hard drive. You can literally take like a normal household drill, a DIY drill, and literally just go and drill a couple of holes through the hard drive. That is actually very effective. A second method you guys can go make use of is something called shredding. So this normally means you're going to go and take an industrial shredder. It's not like a paper shredder, although it does actually kind of work in the same concept though. It's a metal shredder and it rips that hard drive to actual bits and pieces. A third method would be to go and use incineration. That is when you go and melt this hard drive down basically to molten metal. And then the fourth and the last method, which is actually not something I recommend, is degassing. So you're basically going to go and use like a magnet to go and corrupt the hard drive and things like that. It's not 100% effective though, so it's an accepted method and it is listed as a possible answer in the exam, but it's not something I would recommend using in real life, guys. So there is the 4 methods. All 4 of these could possibly be asked in the exam, so they'll say, which of the following can you go and use to go and dispose of a hard drive? And they might mention all 4, they might mention 1 or 2, or they might mention only 1. Chances are they'll normally go and mention only 1 of these answers, and you'll have to go and choose that 1 answer from a list of possible answers. So any one of these, guys, is an acceptable answer. If they give you 4 possible answers to choose from, and you can only choose 1, chances are they're only going to give you 1 of these 4 randomly. They might possibly say, choose all that apply, or choose 2, or choose 3, or choose 4 answers, which means they will probably be listing more than 1 of these. Now you know what all 4 of them are, though. Alright, folks, and then something else you need to be aware of when it comes to disposing of hard drives and things is third party. That means certificates to ensure compliance. Now, with most medium to large size companies, it's not as simple as just disposing of something like a hard drive when they kick the bucket. No. Especially when it comes to servers. If you go and, let's say, remove a hard drive from a big old server. A hard drive that has now failed. Now, you might say, okay, well, let's just go and destroy it ourselves. We can destroy it ourselves. We can throw it in the bin, whatever. And then you go and put a nice, clean, fresh one in so the server can keep running. Now, eventually, at some point in time, that big company is going to get audited by security auditors. And they're going to see in the logs that a hard drive was replaced. So they'll be like, okay, that's all good and well. We can see you replaced a hard drive. But where is the old hard drive? They're going to ask questions. They're going to want to know what happens with the old hard drive. Where is it? Now, you might even say, hey, we destroyed it because we did not want somebody to get their hands on the data on that hard drive. We destroyed it. And then once again, they'll say, okay, cool, that sounds great. It's all good. But where's the proof? How can you prove to me as the auditor that you've actually done that? How do they know for sure you did that? They don't. So that is why this is done by a third party. So normally in a lot of companies, guys, especially medium to large size companies, a third party company is going to come there and they will collect the failed hard drives and old computers and anything that you want to dispose of. They will write down the serial numbers of these hard drives and whatever hardware this might be. They will destroy it on your behalf and they will issue you and your company with a certificate you can put on file. And now, when an auditor comes and does an inspection, you will have those certificates on file of the serial numbers that shows that these drives have actually been destroyed. Pretty cool, right? Unfortunately, it does cost you extra money, but at least you'll be compliant. So guys, best practice. Secure disposal to prevent recovery and also to reduce e-waste. So we don't want old hard drives and old computers lying on a dump site somewhere. No! We want to go and recycle this stuff. So that is going to be a lot more secure, but it's also going to help us with e-waste. But it's a correct way of doing this and it's a wrong way of doing it. It's one thing to go and destroy a hard drive yourself, to, ensure that it's secure. But then you won't necessarily be recycling it because can you go and recycle a hard drive yourself? Probably not. And will you get a certificate to prove that it was done? Probably not. So it's best to go and do this through a third party. Alright folks, I'm going to move you on to the third and the last section in this module, which is artificial intelligence, or you folks might know this more commonly as AI. So AI is the new topic that's been added in this 1200 series of A+. It has never before been an A+, but obviously now with the whole world changing and the whole landscape of IT changing, there's obviously a need for this to be in the course now. So if you go check the objectives of A+, it is in the course objectives, and it is something they might possibly ask you about in the exam, guys. I don't foresee them asking about anything that was not in the course, because that would not be fair. So I'm going to teach you guys specifically what is in the course, and only what is in the course. They will not ask you anything outside of the scope, because, it's not fair. If it's not in the course, then they won't ask you about it. They can't expect you to know about stuff about AI if it was not in the course. And I specifically teach what is in the course. Anyway, folks, the first topic up in this AI section is application integration. Now, it might sound pretty dull, but it's actually pretty interesting. So, first of all, guys, when we talk about AI, it enhances software with things like forecasting. It enhances software with things like automation and optimization. So, I wouldn't say we couldn't do this in the past. We could absolutely do those three things I've just mentioned. But these days, you'll find that AI is built in almost everywhere. If you go look at your normal Office suite that's installed in your machine, it's got AI built into it. If you look at your normal Windows operating system, they started integrating AI into your Windows operating system. If you look at, even stuff that's not exactly software, if you go to Google search engine, you'll find that AI is built into the Google search engine now. Heck, it's even somewhat built into your browsers nowadays. It's built in somewhat or completely almost everywhere these days. It makes things so much faster, so much smoother, so much more optimized, I think is the word I really want to go for here. So these days, guys, integration methods would be, it can either be built in straight from the start, although if you go look at the old school stuff, it was probably not built in straight from the start. It's probably added afterwards via some sort of third-party add-ons, or custom APIs. New software these days and new operating systems and new platforms, yes, it might be built in straight from the start and probably will be built in straight from the start. But any old existing software and stuff you had, if it's got AI, it was probably added afterwards. There's some sort of update, an add-on, or an API. You get what I'm saying. Now, a couple of key AI capabilities, guys, that you guys need to know about, and keep in mind this is something they'll probably ask you about in the exam. is NLP. If you guys don't know what NLP is, it is short for Natural Language Processing. It gives AI the ability to understand you as a human being and to communicate with you as a human being. So when you go and talk verbally to an AI, it will be able to understand that and it will be able to talk back to you verbally. When you type something to an AI, let's say you type it in a document or in a search engine or wherever, it gives AI the ability to understand what you've just typed, and it gives AI the ability to give you some sort of feedback based on what you've just typed. So kind of like ChatGPT. So if you go to ChatGPT or some platform like that, and you type something into it, and it replies to you, that would be NLP. It understood what you asked of it, and it was able to give you a reply. So that's the natural language processing. Now, what you guys might have noticed, maybe you saw this, maybe not, when it comes to verbal communication of an AI, in the beginning phase, it was a little rough. When the AI speaks to you, you could actually hear it was an AI. You could understand it, but you could actually hear in the voice of the AI that this is definitely AI. It would not sound human per se. It would sound close enough so we could understand it, but it wouldn't exactly sound human. But nowadays, it's gotten so flippin' good so quickly that sometimes we can honestly not distinguish that when an AI is talking to us and when an AI is not, when it's an actual human. We don't know. So when it's now just typed, then we don't know. Now, when someone is speaking verbally, we don't know. And it's gotten so bad to the point when they show you a video of this person speaking, you'll even believe that that's someone real, because even the video itself looks real. Meanwhile, the video is fake, the audio is fake, everything is fake. It's gotten so amazing, so cool, and quite frankly at the same time so freaking scary that it's just super realistic, I think is the word I want to use. It's just so realistic. And then another one we get, guys, is ML, which is short for machine learning. This is the one that actually scares people. It is the one that scares the general public, and it's why so many people are against AI. Machine learning gives AI the ability, or this is where AI has the ability, quite frankly, to learn things. It learns from you talking to it, it learns from you giving it instructions, and eventually it just kind of teaches itself, and it evolves. So maybe in the beginning, in the initial beginning stages, you gave it a bit of instructions, you taught it a little bit of things, maybe it went through some documents itself, and then from there, it just kind of takes it upon itself to go and learn the rest. It'll just figure out the rest on its own, and it'll just keep teaching itself, and it just kind of evolves. So machine learning is that evolve factor, where it just keeps evolving, it just keeps teaching itself, and it keeps going and going to a point where it's probably going to end up knowing more than us. I think a lot of AIs probably do know more than us. That is the part that scares a lot of human beings, to the point where we might say, you know what? Is there a point where this machine might learn enough to the point where they could start locking us out of stuff? Where they could start maybe potentially even harming us? We don't know. So this is all up for debate. It can go either way at this point in time, I think. But that's the scary part, I think, of AI. It's very cool, but also very scary. It allows this AI to go and make data-driven predictions amongst many, many other things. It just allows it to learn, it allows it to evolve, it allows it to make predictions, and just become human, I suppose. And then I think the third one I'm going to mention, which is the last one for today, CV. Doesn't sound very fancy, does it? But it's basically image recognition, guys. So you'll obviously know that AI has the ability to go and compile documents for you, resumes, or some of you guys might call it CVs. It can compile a lot of stuff for you, and unfortunately, too many people, I think, are making use of this. It's made people lazy to the point where they rely on AI too much these days. And you'll get people that'll maybe go and maybe do some sort of project for a class test, and instead of doing it themselves, they'll have AI, something like ChatGPT, do it completely for them. Which means they're technically cheating, because they were supposed to go and do something themselves. It was part of the class exercise, was to do it completely yourself as a human being. And then they went and got some sort of AI, like ChatGPT, to go and do this document or this whatever for them. Now, CV allows AI to detect AI. Yeah. So when somebody goes and uses AI to go and write a class report or a test or whatever, AI is able to detect when another AI wrote that. It's going to be able to detect that. So if you're not supposed to do it, guess what? We will be able to detect that using something called image recognition. And then lastly, guys, there's seamless data exchange, which improves AI insights. AI It's just so fast and smooth in the background. I kind of feel like I'm selling this to you guys, but I'm not. It actually kind of scares me at the same time. I'm amazed, I'm impressed, and I'm actually scared at the same time. So it's a lot of emotions going through me at the same time while I'm going through this with you guys. It's I don't know how I want to feel about this. I'm honestly amazed and impressed and scared at the same time when I explain this to you guys. And if you look at just like 3-4 years ago, guys, AI was hardly unheard of. You would not have heard of ChatGPT or any of these other things, and now suddenly everyone and everything knows about it, and they're all using it, and it's evolved so much, it's just flippin' scary. Anyway, guys, let's talk about policy, specifically from an AI perspective. Now, guys, when we say policy, this is things like AI usage policies in the workplace. What are you or your employees or your staff members or the users of your client's company, what are they exactly allowed to use AI for and what not? Some companies do not tolerate AI. They specifically state that the employees are not allowed to use AI for the purpose of work. This can be for many reasons, because they expect the employee to do this stuff, not the AI. If the AI is doing it, then they feel they might as well not pay the employee, because why are we paying you monthly salary if the AI is doing all the work? So, yeah, sometimes it's for that. Other times it's for security reasons. The AI, some of these AIs, they see stuff they're not supposed to, just like a human being. And when you start sharing information with the AI to get it to do stuff for you, that AI has that information in it. And when the public now goes and runs the right query against that AI, they can retrieve that information out of the AI. So it's not a good idea to go and use AI for all forms of work. Only some forms of work in some situations. So you'll find that most companies these days, if they don't have it already, they'll probably start enforcing it, will have some form of acceptable usage policy, in other words AUP, which sets guidelines and legal compliance as to what you're allowed to use AI for in your company and what not. If you start deviating from that, you can land yourself in some serious hot water to the point where you can get sued or even go to prison. Be very careful, guys, what you use AI for. Also, the policies will normally go and define AI-related plagiarism and attribution rules. It will also clarify AI's role in writing and restrict AI's generated submissions. So these policies will go and say what you're allowed to use them for and what you're not allowed to use them for in a nutshell. Think of them as guidelines. Now, in terms of limitations, yes, that's right, folks. AI has limitations. I bet you guys didn't know that. So AI's limitations that you need to go and consider is things like bias. Unfortunately, guys, AI inherits its biases from training data and design. So if the user that's using it is biased, then, well, guess what? AI is going to inherit that. So depending on the way you type, depending on the way you talk, depending on what you say to it and what information you give to it, it's going to inherit that. Yes, it's almost like your child that inherits from you. So if you're a mean kind of person, then your child might be mean. If you're a racist kind of person, then your child's going to be racist. If you're not racist, then your child won't be racist. Generally, children are innocent. It's us as parents that normally make these children, well, not so innocent. They inherit that from us. So if they see mommy and daddy's very racist, then they'll probably be racist. If they see mommy and daddy's not racist, then they won't be racist. Fascinating, is it not? Now AI, think of it as a child, guys. It's gonna learn from you or from us. So if you are biased, then it's gonna be biased. Scary. So when you go and use AI, guys, keep in mind, your AI that you're using could very well be biased. It could. Honestly, it can. There's also hallucinations. Yes, that's right. AI has hallucinations, guys. AI may possibly generate incorrect or fabricated information. It is very possible, and I myself have seen this many times before. There's been quite a few times where I've run a couple of tests on AI. I think one of the main ones I did this on was ChatGPT, but I've done this on other ones as well, where I asked it questions, and the information it gave me, I know for a fact is completely incorrect. And this includes IT information. It includes stuff from A+. It gave me completely wrong information, or just in general a little bit of incorrect information or fabricated information. Sometimes it pulls this information from sources, and the sources are incorrect. So if I go and ask my, let's say, my ChatGPT a question, if it doesn't know the answer, it's going to go and look in various places, including places like Reddit. And depending on what people on Reddit say, it's going to assume that that's correct. So maybe somebody on Reddit asked a similar question, and somebody else on Reddit answered that person's question. And now, since ChatGPT doesn't really know, it's going to go according to that random Reddit post that it saw. It saw somebody else ask that question on Reddit, It saw a second person answer that question, and it's going to pop out that answer that second person gave on Reddit. Meanwhile, that second person on Reddit was completely incorrect. So you be careful, guys. The information that these AIs are giving you is not always correct. Granted, it is for the most part correct, and granted, it's getting more and more accurate by the day, but it's never 100% correct. So when you start using these AIs like ChatGPT for your purposes of work, for your studies and stuff, verify the information, guys. Do not go according to the first thing that your AI is telling you. Verify it, because it could be incorrect. So that brings me to accuracy, guys. The output depends on the data quality. Flawed data leads to data errors. So if this AI of yours is now going to randomly go and pull the information from some place like Reddit, I'm just using Reddit as an example, guys, then there's a very good chance that that information will be flawed. The quality is, it's not great. So be careful, guys, that's all I'm saying. Best practice here, guys, would be to always verify AI-generated information before you go and use it. That includes your studies. I know a lot of you guys are using platforms like ChatGPT for your studies, including for the CompTIA A+ course. But did you know that ChatGPT and these AIs are not always correct, guys? So be careful when you use these AIs for your studies. It's not always correct. It's best for you as a human being to go and verify it yourself. It's going to take longer, but at least you can have the correct information. Alright folks, before I move you on to the last topic of this module and for this video, yes, we're about to move into the last topic, guys. Today's secret word or phrase, and for those of you that's been following along with my course, you probably know what the secret word or phrase thing is all about. Today's secret word or phrase is AI, or artificial intelligence. Let's see what you guys can come up with when we say AI or artificial intelligence. I'm actually very curious to see what you guys come up with this time. I think that's a juicy topic, a really big, fat, juicy one. So I'm really curious to see what you guys come up with. Anyway, so the last topic for today's video, guys, is private versus public. Now, we're talking about AI here. So in other words, we're talking about private AI and public AI. Yes, a lot of you guys probably didn't know that, but you get private AI and you get public AI. Things like ChatGPT, Gemini, and DeepSync, and all those other ones that you guys probably hear about all the time, that is public AI. It is AI that pretty much most of us know about and most of us have got access to. Private AI is when it was specifically designed for a company, and only that company can go and use it. So private AI model, guys, is developed for a specific organization or a specific company, using both private and public data. It can use data which is available to the public, which your public AI would also go and use. But the private AI, it has access to information that's, well, the public AI would not have access to. It has information that you fed it specifically that's going to be kept inside your company. That is a lot more secure. Remember, we said you need to be careful what information you provide to an AI, because other people can go and query that from an AI and they can get a hold of it. But if it's a private AI that's only available in your company, then that's obviously a lot more secure. You can be a lot more open with it and share more private things with it, since that AI is for the most part only available in your company. As for the public AI model, I think I don't even need to explain this one now, since you guys kind of know it. So that is openly accessible, guys. Examples would be like the ones I've just given you. Things like ChatGPT, Gemini, and you'll see there's many other ones out there, of course. These public AI models, guys, they're trained on public data and public user interactions. So that's why you need to be very careful what you ask it and what information you give to it, because other people will be able to get their hands on that information. So if you told AI something that it did not know, someone else can now learn about that via that AI platform. It remembers, it does not forget. Be very careful about that, guys. So when it comes to security concerns, guys, protect user privacy, especially with public AI. And be careful, prevent data leaks, which is why we've got this whole private AI concept. So if you're going to be using a public AI model, very good chance that you can go and leak some sort of sensitive information for you, yourself, some friend of yours, a colleague of yours, or your company. So you can land yourself in a lot of hot water by doing that. Alright folks, so that is it for today's module. This is the second last module. There's only one more module left in the A+ course, then we are done. So you've almost made it to the end. Just one more module to go, guys, then you're completely done with the A+ course. Core 1 and Core 2. Unless you've started with Core 2 first, then you still need to go and do Core 1. So in case you guys don't know, Core 1 is from Module 1 all the way through to Module 10. And Core 2 is from Module 11 all the way through to Module 22. So if you did all the modules, all 22 modules, then you would have done the full A+ course, both Core 1 and Core 2. Alright folks, thank you very much for sticking around with me. Thanks for supporting my channel if you've done that. If you do want to support my channel, you can find that information in the video description down below. You can make a donation, buy me a coffee or a milkshake. You can go do a PayPal donation if you want to, or you can become a Patreon. Now, in terms of PayPal donations, here's a list of a couple of PayPal donors. Thank you very much, guys. Really do appreciate the donations. And for those of you that's opted to become a Patreon, a paid Patreon, here are your names. Now, guys, most of the Patreons' names are not displayed here because a lot of them are free Patreons, and then you also get Patreons that just don't want the names to be displayed, which is most of them, actually. Most people prefer to be anonymous. So if you do become a paid Patreon, please reach out to me. Let me know if you want your name to be displayed or not. You do have the option to go and choose what name gets displayed, should you want something displayed. Lastly, folks, you probably noticed already, the channel does have a Discord server. Link in the video description down below. It's literally the last link in the video description. And it also has a Reddit. So if you guys are on Reddit, you're welcome to go and check out the Reddit. It's called CompTIA_plus. And yeah, maybe go join it and have a chat with me there. Alright folks, I'll see you in the next and the last CompTIA A module, which is 22.